It was an incredibly powerful week that we had with our mishlachat, the delegation of 14 remarkable Israeli rabbis and educators and community leaders from across the entire country of Israel who came to be with us. And these individuals are working tirelessly and fearlessly to create a vibrant and pluralistic Jewish landscape in Israel and to use Torah as a vehicle for healing in the wake of October 7th. I'm deeply, deeply grateful to Roli and to Felicia, not sure where they are here, and also to their assistant Laura, but really to Roli and Felicia for their vision and their leadership and the love that it took to really bring them and put together an incredible mishlachat. Laura did a lot of the behind the scenes, including a lot of the staff here at BJ, and then of course to Steve Stolman, who his generosity and his unwavering dedication to BJ and really to an Israel that reflects our moral and spiritual values is something that is unmatched. So gratitude for that. On Wednesday afternoon, as a part of the delegation, we had an opportunity to have lunch with the 14 Israelis who joined us, and also about 20, maybe it was even more, rabbis from across New York City. It was a meaningful moment to connect with others around here and rabbis in particular to share what we've been carrying as rabbis and as leaders during such a broken time, both here in America and of course in Israel, and to think about what it might be and what we each might need individually and also what we would need as a group from each other and then from our partners in Israel. Rabbi Guy Austrian, who actually worked here at VJ years ago as our social justice program coordinator, maybe it had a different title at that time, and he's now the rabbi just uptown at Fort Tryon Jewish Center. He made a very powerful comment that stayed with me. He spoke about fighting through Torah. I don't know if I love the image, but you understand the idea. He said that we are seeing more and more a Torah mavet, this idea of a Torah of death. And I interpreted this as in our fear for survival, we see extremists and others that are invoking Torah to justify violence and war. We watch the same thing unravel in our own country, where the Bible or our Torah is used to support hateful legislation and violence against marginalized communities, women, the LGBTQIA+ community, and many others. Guy suggested that maybe what we really need, is to counter this by spreading a Torah shel chaim, a Torah of life, a Torah that affirms life above all else, the Torah that reminds us again and again of the godliness and divine spark within every human being, that ultimate oneness. We are all deeply connected. This is exactly the Torah I think we need. It is also a big part of counting the Omer, which is the period we're in right now, and why I think we work so hard on ourselves, refining our character traits. Each day comes with different character traits that we're working on as we eagerly anticipate the receiving of our Torah once again on Shavuot, which is just about 15 days away. We need to be mindful of the Torah that we want to put into our world. And the way to do that is also knowing ourselves and what it is that we're hoping for. Holiness, humility, love, empathy, nuance, these, I believe, and I think, are also what brings many of us here. These are the messages at the heart of our beloved Torah. And then we get to this week's Parsha. We get to our Parsha. Parashat Emor. And the conclusion of our Parsha is one of the very few narrative stories in the entire book of Vayikra. And this story is the story of the Mekalel, or a blasphemer. You can find it in your Eitz Chaim. If you have a Chumash, you can find it on page 732. I'm going to go through it, but if you want to read it as I'm going, 732. Vayetze ben isha Yisraelit vehu ben ish mitzri betoch bnei Yisrael. This is how our story opens. Vayinatsu b'machaneh ben hayisraelit Ish HaYisraeli. There came out among the Israelites a man whose mother was Israelite and whose father was Egyptian. And a fight broke out in the camp between that half Israelite and the certain Israelite who was in the camp. The son of the Israelite woman uses God's name to maybe curses God's name. It's not actually clear. The commentaries have lots of ideas, but does something using God's name, either using the name to bring about curse or actually cursing through God's name. And then is brought to Moses. His mother's name is given, which is also very rare. It's one of the only women named that we see. And her name is Shlomit, the daughter of Dibri, and she's a part of the tribe of Dan. And Moses says we need to detain this man. We're going to put him aside. And Moshe doesn't actually know what to do with him. So Moses turns to God and says, what should I do with this person who used your name and cursed you? God says, take this blasphemer outside of the camp. Let all who heard him lay their hands on his head, and let the whole community stone him. Then the law is stated outright. Anyone, any Israelite or stranger, a ger or an Israelite, who curses God shall be put to death. The narrative seems to be over, and then we get a list of different laws that come, which include nefesh tachat nefesh. If you kill someone, you will be killed. Or other laws that include, if anyone maims another, that what was done to him shall be done in return. Fracture for fracture, ayin tachat ayin, an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, etc. But then it goes back to the story. So this is an interruption to the story. It seems like it's done. We heard the story, we got the law, but the Parashat ends by telling us that then they take this Mikalel, they take the one who cursed God's name out of the camp, and they stone him. Staring back at us this week is a Torah of Mavet, a Torah of death. It's painful and it's disturbing. A man, a half Israelite, half Egyptian, curses God's name, or again, maybe uses it in vain in some way, and he's killed. The Torah sets a precedent. Curse God, and you die. And in the middle of this story, we learn, kill someone, and you die. Hurt someone, and you too will be hurt. Death begets death. Tit for tat, this is what it says. The contrast with last week's parasha, which holds one of the most life-affirming lines in the Torah, V'ahavta l're'echa kamocha, love your neighbor as yourself, is stark. The killing of the Mikalel also echoes a narrative in Bamidbar, which is the next book that we'll read from. And this is a man who goes out on Shabbat, and gathers a bunch of sticks, and his punishment is that he too is killed. The Torah, the document we read and study and that is so sacred to us, has a lot of murder, death, and killing, both internally as a people and then also externally. And even in our story, I'll say theologically, it's incredibly challenging. God is very much at the heart of this law that comes out. On the pshat, on the face of this, the message seems simple. Using God's name in vain or cursing it means death. Murder means death. But we know the truth is not so simple. In this logic, the people of the community now become killers themselves. We punish murder, with more death. We answer violence with violence. We get stuck in a vicious cycle. Our sages, too, were deeply unsettled by these laws. The laws of the eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. This is known in Latin as the lex talionis, or the laws of retaliation. Over pages of the Gemara, there are arguments where they go back and forth, and they do their best to reinterpret this idea of an eye for an eye, and they say, or a tooth for a tooth, that's monetary. It doesn't mean we're actually going to go take somebody's eye out. It means what we're going to do is what was the monetary value of that person's eye, and therefore that's what the person is going to have to pay for. But they do still uphold this idea of nefesh tachat nefesh, a life for a life. But they work incredibly hard to make capital punishment nearly impossible. The Mishnah teaches that a Beit Din, a Jewish court that executed even once in every 7 years, and then there's a debate where it says actually once in every 70 years, was considered a murderous court. They do not want us to do this. This is not the ideal, even if it's being told to us in the Torah. It feels somewhat redeeming that the rabbis go about this process, although I don't think it's 100% satisfying. The Torah lays out a pretty brutal system, and the rabbis do some logical and textual gymnastics, which they are very good at, to rework the system into one that feels more equitable and certainly much less violent. But still, we find ourselves left with this Mikalel, the person who cursed God's name. What do we do with this strange and gruesome story? As I went into some of the commentary and digging deeper, of course, it only gets much more complicated. While the backstory changes slightly, according to different midrashim and different commentaries, and even the Zohar, our mystical text, there's a shared understanding that the Mikalel's Egyptian father, remember, he has a mother who is Yisraeli, she's a Israelite, and a father who's Egyptian. And they say that his father, who was Egyptian, was none other than the Egyptian taskmaster who Moshe killed in defense of the Israelite slave. So going all the way back to the story in Shmot, in the book of Shmot, the last book we were in, if we remember, Moses grows up. He grows up in the palace of Pharaoh. He himself is like an Egyptian. And he grows up thinking he's an Egyptian, although we know that he was saved coming down the Nile. He is an Israelite himself. His mother was a part of his childhood. He goes out one day and he sees a taskmaster, an Egyptian taskmaster, killing one of the slaves, or hurting one of the slaves. I shouldn't say killing, but hurting one of the slaves. And the injustice of it all brings him to this moment where he strikes the Egyptian and he kills this Egyptian. The rabbis believe, the tradition, the midrashic tradition is that this person who cursed God, who is stoned, his Egyptian father was the one that Moses killed back when they were in Egypt, before he fled. So underlying the entire narrative of an Egyptian Israelite being killed for cursing God, and the law of that which comes during the middle of the narrative of nefesh tachat nefesh, a life for a life, is the quiet presence of another killing, one committed by none other than our Moshe Rabbeinu in the name of justice. This is what makes Torah so endlessly fascinating, so maddening, so complex and layered and nuanced. These laws and this story capture one of my internal struggles, and I think which is exactly what brought me to this story. I saw it and I was like, what do I do with this? This is so disturbing. And then I was like, my soul is telling me I have to talk about it. We have to learn it together. There's a part of me that deeply believes in my bones that no matter what, I don't think we should ever kill, even the worst of it. It sounds naive, but it is. There's a part of me so deeply inside that I say we are not the ones to take life from someone else. It's not on us. We are all made in the image of God, even though that is incredibly challenging. And then there's also the part of me that understands that there are people in this world, unfortunately, and we have seen way too much of it, that are so evil, so devoid of compassion, who have no value for human life, that their death potentially is necessary for the sake of security and for the sake of justice. It feels impossibly messy, because in killing them, we become killers ourselves. That to me is one of the deepest tragedies of this story. I think about the people at the end who stone this man, who's a part of their community. What is it like for them to walk back after that experience? Death begets death. Revenge leads to more revenge. And nowhere in these laws do we see, or is there any acknowledgement of how many thousands upon thousands of innocent lives are lost in the pursuit of justice. How our morals and our values as individuals and as communities and as nations are tested and tried by evil, and how we choose to face it. How sometimes in our pursuit for justice, we end up perpetrating equal or greater injustice. This is the Torah Chaim. This is our Torah of life, a Torah that demands us to confront its hardest texts, life's most painful truths, and to wrestle with them, to face the Torah of Mavet, which mirrors our reality, and no matter what, it's our job to continue to believe in a Torah of life, that we are each made in the image of God, that it is our job to care for the orphans, for the widows, for the strangers, for the most vulnerable who are among us. We're reminded of this each time we say goodbye to the Torah and we place her back in the ark. No matter what we've just encountered, what we've read, what we've struggled with, we affirm, Eitz Chaim hi, l'machazikim ba, v'tomchecha meushar, derachecha darchei noam, v'chol netivoteha shalom. We say Torah is a tree of life to those of us who are brave enough to hold it. Its ways are ways of pleasantness, and all its paths are of peace. So may it be. Shabbat shalom.